I think in recent years that journalists who might have otherwise behaved, at least professionally, have lost the knack and the skill of journalism and the will of journalism. I think it's gone. The spaces that were once there in the so-called mainstream media for those who could ask hard questions, who could challenge the system, have all but closed. Not entirely, but pretty well, all but closed. And journalism has given up. It's become something else. It's become an echo chamber of whatever propaganda is run through the system. War with China, Russia to blame for the weather. Some of it is, as I say, almost laughable propaganda, but it is presented as news. Now, you ask me why that is so. I can't really answer to that. I do know that there's been a surrendering of what journalism was, and journalism is basically doing your best to keep the record straight. That's all. You don't get it right all the time, but doing your best to keep the record straight. That duty, and I would suggest it's a duty, has been abandoned. And I think journalism is about evidence. It's about hard evidence. And throughout my career, I've had a duty imposed on me when I've reported from Asia, from Cambodia, Vietnam, Indo-Pakistan, the United States, to produce evidence. That evidence is no longer required. China may be doing ghastly things, but we never look in the mirror, do we? While we accuse China of subverting all these human rights, the fact that the United States has overthrown the government in Bolivia, its sanctions have caused, according to a United Nations estimate, up to 100,000 deaths in Venezuela. The suffering that has been caused by us is never a subject for serious discussion. We have our enemies, we have our demons, and they're the ones. Hong Kong is the perfect one. I mean, it's interesting. The Chinese are bringing in a national security law, and it sounds pretty harsh, actually. But the other day, the president of the Law Council in this country, in Australia, said that actually the Chinese national security law wasn't as far-reaching as the new draconian laws that have been brought in this country. A democracy. What is going on in the world is a struggle for freedom, true freedom, within democracies. Liberty has become privilege. Perhaps it always was, but it certainly is now. And the loss, the erosion of democracy is the big story. That's the big story that no one really wants to write. In Australia, these draconian foreign interference laws, as I mentioned, at least the equal of anything China can impose in Hong Kong. In the United States, both the presidential and other executive impositions, and we like this word these days, though we seldom use it about ourselves, impositions of forms of a totalitarianism. These are not a story. Trump is, because he's reviled for all sorts of reasons. All he is a caricature of a system. His predecessor, Barack Obama, who's much admired by many, was the one who put whistleblowers away, was the one who started 7 wars, was the one who ordered the murder of people by drone. These are all in our so-called backyard. But it's become almost a fetish. There are the two bad guys in the world. There's China China wasn't a bad guy until a few years ago, actually. It was, most people's view of it was benign. Now it's a bad guy. Russia has always been a bad guy. But what is so dangerous about this misinformation, the fact that China is reported without people understanding this country is ringed by 400 US bases on its doorstep, and that China is almost certainly going into a form of a state of siege. I've seen this happen in other countries. That means it will defend itself. China has, as far as I can see, for all its faults, and there are many, of course, China wants to get on making business and making things in the world. What's going on here, of course, is that China once again, and this has happened before in history, China once again is challenging the very notion of Western and white superiority, and that is unacceptable.
Since you mentioned Australia, Scott Morrison, your Prime Minister, said, actually, it's no longer inconceivable. It's no longer inconceivable that there is a hot war between China and the West. What did you make of what Scott Morrison said? Do you think that he's showing us what some leaders in NATO nations are thinking?
I don't take a lot of notice of what Morrison says, to be frank with you, because Morrison is an echo of the US. At the height of the pandemic, Morrison announced $270 billion worth of arms for perhaps the most secure country, secure politically, secure strategically, secure geographically on Earth, Australia. And the centerpiece of this new wonder arsenal will be missiles that will be able to reach China. China is Australia's biggest trading partner. Unravel that if you can.